Welcome to the Moviegoers Society podcast, brought to you by Nerdtropolis. I'm your host, Sean Tajipour, the mayor of Nerdtropolis, and join me once again is my co-host, Drew Munhausen, the professional media movie mastermind, who is dealing with his emotions today, it seems like.
I think both of us are, right? We were talking
Yes.
about it a little bit before we started recording. It's just lots of emotions, whether it's stress, anxiety, joy, disgust, whatever it may be. There's lots of emotions flowing between us, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and we're just overwhelmed with work, balancing life in general. And just, I think the heat is getting to us out here in Houston, and we just need a good old fashioned vacation, staycation, and maybe just unplug. I mean, that's usually the best way to do it, but I don't know if I'm able to unplug, Drew. Are you able to unplug? I mean, how do you do it? I can't.
I need to. I've literally was just having the conversation in my head today about like, do I need to delete social media and be done with it? But then at the same time, I'm like, I help on, I'm part of these shows and do podcasts and things, and like that's obviously the best way to share things. So I feel like it's this necessary evil in my life. It's a dangerous cycle, Sean.
No, it's tough. And, we want to keep doing this fun things that we keep doing, loving movies and shows and talking about it. So it's going to be hard to unplug. But in this podcast, we dive into the world of cinema, exploring everything from beloved classics to the latest blockbusters. And today on episode 45, on the road to 50, we head inside out. Like Drew mentioned, we talk about our emotions that we're dealing with. Perfect timing for this. I just probably have to rewatch the first one now after our little mini conversation about just anxiety in general. And this is the perfect time to talk about anxiety. I know everyone's been dealing out about anxiety, I'm sure, for the past few years or their whole lives. And I thought Inside Out 2 is a really good film that really deals with that. But before we do get into all of that, we want to make sure you can connect with us online. You can find me on every single social media platform at Sean Taj. Follow Nerdtropolis at Nerdtropolis. And don't forget to visit nerdtropolis.com for your daily dose of movie news, reviews, interviews, and trailers. And Drew, where can they find you when you're not contributing to Nerdtropolis?
You can find me at Drew Munhausen on all the different social media platforms, weekly over at Fresh Out the Podcast, where we talk about a lot about video games recently. There's been a lot of video game news. And then, of course, on the Moviegoer Society every week talking about movies. And I'm excited to talk about Inside Out 2 today. I feel like there is kind of a lot to unpack with this one.
No, there is. Speaking of video games, I think that is one thing I need to start doing again. I think that's a good way to kind of just lay back and deal with some anxiety too. I think that's a good way to kind of get your mind off things. And to be honest, I have every single video game platform you can think of, a lot of great stuff. So I just need to find the time because that usually always relaxes me and really lets me reset. But real quick, Drew, what's like the last video game you played?
I've been playing actually on PS5 this game called Rise of the Ronin, and it's like open world Ronin, like 1800s samurai or shogun, I should say, kind of game. I've actually really been enjoying it. It's really good.
I pay for that Nintendo Switch like online, I guess, or whatever it's called, or like the bundle that where you can play old school NES games, Super NES, Sega, N64. So I have like all like the classic collections they put on the Switch, and I bought all the like classic controllers that are compatible with it. So like I have an N64 controller that Nintendo made, like updated wireless, everything else. So I need to like sit back and just go the nostalgic routes and just enjoy all that stuff. So maybe we do a video game episode or, half episode, and talk about gaming because that'd be really fun to dive into that. But also don't forget to catch up on the past episodes of the Moviegoer Society. Tune into my podcast, Real Insights, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course the Nerdtropolis YouTube channel. I have a lot of stuff coming your way, guys. I'm not sure the last time what I mentioned, but there's a lot coming. I guess I'll keep it a secret. Just visit the YouTube channel or the podcast network and stay tuned because there's a lot coming your way for June, July, August. I already have everything planned out and more to come for sure. And before we dive into Inside Out 2, Drew, I am headed to good old San Antonio, Texas this week for the Superhero Comic Con happening June 20th to 23rd at the Freeman Coliseum Expo Hall in San Antonio. Have you seen this lineup? This is big.
I have. You've got all the super people there. Now I almost said supermen, but there are supermen and superwomen. There's all the super people.
No, it's amazing. So I will be moderating close to a dozen panels. This is a great opportunity for myself and Nerdtropolis to really lead fun and exciting conversations with all the stars coming. Not the ones I'm moderating, but real quick, Chris Pine will be there, Jake Gyllenhaal will be there, Andy Serkis, Iman Vellani will be there. But I'm talking to a lot of people from Dean Cain to Brandon Routh, to Peter Weller, who you know as RoboCop, to Helen Slater, Laura Vandervoort. We're also talking to Kimberly J. Brown, Sam Jones, and even what's his name, Walker Scobell as well, and more. There's a few more coming. Jamie Alexander. So I mean, there's a long list of people I will be moderating their panel for, which I'm super excited. So if you're in San Antonio, you spot me there, say hello. I'd like to meet all of y'all in person. But that'll be really fun, a really cool experience. So I'm looking forward to that. A lot of homework I got to be doing. I've been watching a lot of stuff, Drew. I'm not gonna lie. I've been watching a lot of the Adventures of Clark Kent or Superman and Lois with Dean Cain. Been watching some of that. Just watching some Smallville. I guess just laying back and kind of.
You had homework to do.
I had homework to do, but it's stuff I grew up with. But it's nice to kind of reminisce and to see, the stuff that we all loved. Rewatched Superman Returns and like really paid attention and stuff like that. Look closer, kind of see if I can find little fun Easter eggs. There's a lot of stuff in that one. We might have to do like a Superman episode. The legacy of Superman in general is so awesome. Like there's so much to it. And we had so many people play Superman, which is really cool. I mean, it's pretty impressive. I'm trying to think number wise if it's more than people that played Batman or it's almost even between the TV shows, animated shows, and the films. So a lot of good stuff there. But yeah, Superhero Comic Con in San Antonio. Hopefully, I will see you there. But Drew, we've waited almost 10 years for a Pixar sequel for Inside Out 2, the first Inside Out film, groundbreaking animated feature film, I believe so, which took us on an emotional journey inside the mind of an 11-year-old girl named Riley, where we met her core emotions: joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust. Disgust still kind of makes me laugh that's on there. And she's, navigating the complexities of growing up and a big move. And now, a decade later, we have the sequel, Inside Out 2. Can you believe it's taken this long, Drew? I mean, almost 10 years to get a Pixar sequel. I mean, was the excitement there for you when this was first announced? Almost nine years now.
Yes, I think we're not adding anything new to the conversation about Pixar, right? And like the kind of the past couple of years of the box office hasn't been where they want it to be. Elemental, legged out to a good amount of money, but it didn't do well up front, and like Lightyear disappointed. And so this is like a return to form for Pixar, right? They're like, what's a surefire bet? Let's do a sequel to one of our most beloved movies of the last 10 years. And now we have Inside Out 2. For me personally, I had a less than stellar experience seeing Inside Out, the first one, in theaters. I saw it at a drive-in. So there was that, and it was paired with San Andreas, starring Dwayne The Rock Johnson. So interesting pairing when I saw that in the summer of 2015. And drive-ins are fun and it's an experience, but like if you're wanting the most high quality theatrical experience, especially of a big animated movie that's very technologically and emotionally, advanced, it's probably not the best place for it. So I wish I had gone to see it again in theaters. I did watch the first one again before going to see Inside Out 2 because I wanted to watch it in a proper setting, and I'm glad that I did. I really enjoy it. I know that it's a lot of people's like favorite Pixar movie of the last of the last 10 years or so. And for me, I think it's very good. I'm probably less high on it, but that's not to say anything bad about it. I think it's a great movie. I think it's just the concepts of what it's presenting was so groundbreaking at the time because it was just new, innovative, creative. So I was really interested to see what they did with the sequel.
Yeah, so we finally got Inside Out 2, bringing back almost everybody. Now you got Riley, now a teenager, and her mind's headquarters undergoes a sudden transformation to accommodate new emotions. This sequel definitely had me feeling a lot of things. I was all over the place for many reasons, and I really liked the addition of anxiety. We spoke about this earlier. I thought that was smart and clever, and it's voiced by Maya Hawke. And I think she was just a perfect choice for anxiety. Really nailed it. And you obviously have For me, my favorites are Amy Poehler, uh, and Phyllis Smith. So you have joy and sadness. And I thought for me, even in the first film, they stood out the most and really have more layers to them in some way because even sadness wasn't always 100% sad because she also shows some other types of emotions for whatever reason that. And then the rest of the voice cast is excellent. But for me, I really like joy and sadness and of course anxiety. Do you have some favorites even from the first film or this one?
I really like sadness, as you said. I think Phyllis Smith is kind of the perfect voice for sadness, and I'm glad that she was back for this one. And then I also agree. I thought anxiety was a great addition to the new film. There's a few other new additions in this one, but I thought they were all a bit more underdeveloped than. I mean, it was clear that those writing the story and making this movie were like wanted to focus on anxiety, and so that I think they accomplished their goal when introducing a few others. They're interesting, but they're not. I just they're not. It's not all there for me personally with the others.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, it's a lot of emotions now. It's wild, but this film does tug at the heartstrings and makes you laugh. But honestly, I didn't. I thought this film was a little too late to be released. I felt like it also felt a little outdated because it's almost been 10 years, since the first film. And for me, visually, I don't feel like the film has evolved. For whatever reason, it's the choice they wanted to make. But I was expecting Pixar to elevate what we saw in the first film. And I felt like it seemed and looked a little flatter in the sequel. And that's what I was kind of disappointed. Maybe it was just my eyes. Some people thought it looked visually great, but to me, it looked bland in some of the details. It lacks sharpness in a lot of the scenes. And, given Pixar's reputation, I anticipated an upgraded version of the first film. That's where I'm at. Well, how do you feel visually? Because I'm looking at the behind you and it just doesn't grab me as something new. It just seems like the first film, which is fine, the great visual, but like maybe a little sharpness, something added to it. And I just didn't experience that.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of an interesting challenge that Pixar faces these days. Like Pixar was on the forefront of animation, right? Like when Toy Story came out in the 90s, that was a huge deal. It's the first feature-length computer animated movie. And that was, I mean, even for me as a child, I knew that was a big deal. And as much as they've improved over the years and they've really excelled at the craft and they create some of the best looking animation around, it's kind of like not good enough anymore because you have these you and I have spoken at length about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, and we've talked about the Spider-Verse movies, and there's these other films out there that are now taking traditional computer animation and doing new things with the innovative things, making it look different from anything we've ever seen. And so now when you watch a traditionally animated Pixar movie, you're like, this isn't as exciting as it once was. It's almost like the norm. So, that's a tough uphill battle for Pixar, I think, because it's not to say the animation's bad. It's still incredible, but I agree with you. It's kind of more of the same from the first Inside Out. And I think part of the issue I had with it is that they didn't really introduce any new concepts to the world that was transformative with the first time they did it.
Yeah, and it's hard to say. Like, I want to say it's wasn't vibrant enough, but like, look at the colors behind you. It's vibrant, but per se, the details, and it could have been more because there's a lot of darkness too, a lot of tones that were dark in the film, and like, there's lack of details. Watch Elemental. Elemental, I thought was visually awesome and not look great, but if you look at also Inside Out 2, there's no details on the walls behind you and the orbs. Like they're just there. There's no really micro details they could have done to kind of make it more immersive. So I was just disappointed in that. And I just felt like some of the emotions kind of looked blurry at times. They weren't as sharp as they could be. And it just would have been nice to see an upgraded version of this world in any aspect, just a little bit. But it just felt like it was the same movie we were watching. And to be honest, unfortunately, I felt like the story felt boring at times, a little over the top. Um, I didn't think this was the best way to introduce anxiety, putting this immense pressure that seems like a very adult like pressure on a 13-year-old, which seemed a little unrealistic to me. Maybe I'm a little out of touch, but I just don't recall that much craziness in my head at that age. I know what I went through at that age, but it didn't seem like as much as she was for a hockey camp like Mighty Ducks times or something. That's what I felt like I was watching. It was a micro version of the Mighty Ducks because this movie is around hockey, and I thought that was a weird choice to do too. I don't know how appealing that is to most of the audience. That Riley is really, I guess, a hockey phenom, and a teenage girl just starting puberty. But like I said, I'm not the target audience, so I don't know what it is to go through that. But maybe Turning Red really tackled what it meant to be 13-year-olds, I think, more than this film. If I had to compare for Pixar, Turning Red is probably the best film that tackles being 13 years old.
Yeah, as far as a coming of age story goes, I agree that Turning Red would be the better one. I like Turning Red more than this movie. I'll just say that straight up. But yeah, so I think you've actually touched on this pretty well, and I'm with you. Like, I don't think I experienced that level of anxiety as a 13-year-old either. Um, but it's different these days. It's a different the youth's different, and cell phones and social media, it's a lot different than it was when we were 13. So I'm willing to kind of give that benefit of the
But did
doubt.
we see? We didn't see
Guess.
social media in this at all, right? If I don't remember any of that. Did she have a phone? Like I don't. This was a pretty dry, like not no technology. It felt like. Remember they took up the phones, so there was no. So the phones were taken up, I
Oh
believe.
yeah, good point.
So and there was not much social media or like bullying. It was just weird. The story wise, it just wasn't. I don't know. It was stagnant maybe at times.
So here's my thing with this, and this kind of goes into my experience of seeing this movie, right? I went and saw this by myself. I'm that guy. I'm the 35-year-old that sat alone in the top row, off to the side, in a pretty jam-packed theater, which we'll talk about the box office in a bit. But my theater was extremely full. Lots of families there. And I chose to go by myself. I have a 4-year-old. I didn't really want to take her to go see this. I wanted to see it on my own. And my reasoning for that is, as with the first one, part of what I think makes the first one so special is like there is so much that you can relate to as far as emotions go, and the way they personify these emotions and the way that they make the inner workings of the mind this tangible thing. I thought was like, it really is pretty incredible, the ideas that they had in the first film. And I think a big part of that is that us as adults, having gone through life experiences, can really empathize and relate to the emotions of this movie because we felt those things before. And I kind of feel like, as someone with a 4-year-old, I don't know if I want her to like be influenced in how her emotions work because of a movie like this, and especially the sequel introducing anxiety, these different things. I feel like as an adult who's been through experiences, to watch it and see how I relate is the way I'd rather experience this than like making my child, who hasn't experienced a lot of these emotions yet, sit through it and be influenced by it. So like, I think the inside out of all Pixar movies, most Pixar movies have a lot for adults there, but kids can enjoy them. And I feel like in the Inside Out franchise in particular is like really more for adults, because I don't know if kids are really getting as much out of it. Maybe that's just me being a little too, just thinking too hard about it. But that's kind of my approach here. Now, as far as the movie itself goes, with you talking about like the hockey thing and everything, yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. The first movie, it's a simple plot, right? Riley's moving from Minnesota to San Francisco. It is a big change, and her emotions go through the ringer, and that's it. The story is mostly about this journey that joy and sadness are going on in the movie. The other three emotions, disgust, fear, and what's the other one? Anger, are kind of off. Like they're still in the little headquarters, and we cut to them on occasion. But the main journey is with joy and sadness. In this one, you have the five emotions from the first movie kind of on an expedition here, but you're getting equally, if not more, screen time of Riley and the hockey storyline going on. When I was like, I'd really rather be seeing kind of what the emotions are going through, but I also understand you kind of have to have more Riley considering the coming of age nature and the anxiety. Like, you need to kind of see what she's going through to make those make more sense, which shows like it, not that this is an overly complicated movie, I don't think it is, but like I just wasn't as interested in Riley as I was the emotions, but because of the story they're telling here, you get a lot of Riley.
I would have liked to see a lot of like split screen in this film, right? Like how it operates inside and out, right? They didn't do any of that. And that would be kind of cool to see that version of this film where you see Riley going through something and there's like a little bubble of them doing their thing. But we don't even get that at all. They could have done a more creative route. I just feel like it's almost a rehash of the first film with a blander story with the hockey and just introducing too many new emotions where you have to sideline a lot of them and not really utilize the great voice actors you have too. And it was just overly stuffed and really didn't have the same effect. But I mean, I did feel a lot of stuff, especially the anxiety part and joy. And I mean, you could take a lot from this film, but overall, it was not the top notch Pixar product I was expecting. Uh, but I would see another one. I think it works if they do like these little. I mean, from 11 to 13, that's great. See what type of time jump they can do. Because 11 to 13 is too close in age to really introduce anything new. Riley in high school would do really well, but these films are not for kids. There's no way this can be not beneficial, but entertaining the kids. First of all, I don't know how kids are gonna be entertained where you get a lot of Riley playing hockey and just training and all this. Like, you just need to cue out some Rocky music, and at times it's gonna feel like a montage scene or something. There's just a lot of hockey in this, and just odd storytelling. I think, like I said, the hockey route wasn't the best way. It's not really relatable for a lot of people, especially a sport that's not the most popular. You know, in at least in the United States. I know it's a big time sport, but they could have appealed it to more. But I enjoyed it. But I don't know. I would see another one though. Would you watch another one?
I would I think there's a lot of focusing on the negatives here, and I do think it's overall like a pretty solid movie. I think the main thing, it's kind of like what we talked about with Furiosa and Mad Max Fury Road, right? In the sense that like the first one is this classic that people have a lot of fondness for, and you now have a sequel. In Furiosa's case it's a prequel, but this is a sequel that kind of is just doing like more of the same, which isn't always a bad thing. It's just never going to surpass what came before it, and that's how I feel with this. Is like it's more Inside Out. It does some really interesting things with the new emotions that are introduced, in particular anxiety. But other than that, it's not introducing like new concepts of the mind. It does a little bit with like your inner self and this tree that grows and, you know, that kind of stuff. But I didn't think that was as interesting as some of the stuff from the first movie, like your forgotten memories and archived memories and your dreamland and all like all these different things, the different emotional islands, all those things. It's all already there, right? So you're just trying to expand on it where you can.
And they don't
And
really
I don't-
visit anything new. And then the odd thing is like she's at summer camp and then her parents don't check it. Like the parents have no appearance really, you know? And I think that's odd too. I just don't know where they got
she's
the
only
store
there
from.
for like 3 days, but she also undergoes like an entire emotional transition in 3 days.
Yeah, it's an interesting way they continue the story. And like I said, I don't take your youngest kids to it. I don't think they're gonna enjoy it. I mean, for example, Drew didn't take his young ones, and I guess this is PG or G. Is this a PG film?
I
It's
assume it's PG, but
which
I don't know for sure. I barely pay attention to ratings these days, I feel like.
that is true. But Pixar, like every time I watch Toy Story film, I know people get tired of all the Toy Story films. I feel emotionally connected to them. That's like the first film I know from Pixar and a big part of my childhood. But I'll
Yeah,
continue to
that's
watch
for sure my Pixar franchise too of choice is Toy Story.
Yeah, but that's something that you can keep continue on. Cars is another franchise that you can keep going with. I think because the world is bigger, and I feel like with Inside Out, the what they introduce is it's not very big. It's very micro. Like they're doing another Finding Nemo somehow, whatever they want to call it. But like the water is huge. You can introduce so much stuff. But like you mentioned, in her head, they had all these little side islands and stuff, but we don't visit really anything. They're
Mm-mm.
just like in a little try to beat. I forgot. I forget the plot of the film now. You know what they're what they're going through because it wasn't really
It
deep.
touches on them, like
Yeah,
it says there's some new ones, and there,
yeah.
but but that's they don't really do anything with it.
No, that's
I
true. And
think
there's a vault too, a vault that was interesting, and we get introduced to a three characters which are a little out there, I guess. But that didn't really do it for me either. I thought it was kind of strange, and I guess I'll mention the pouchy thing was it's hit or miss. For me, it was a miss.
Well, this is one of those things too that's like, okay, I thought that the Bluefy character who talks, the repressed memory or the push away memory of this TV show, that it's a dark secret of Riley's, that like she still enjoys this kid's TV show, right? That's kind of the joke. And I get it. For us as adults who grew up with like Blue's Clues or Dora the Explorer, right? Like if you catch it on TV, you're kind of like, I used to love this as a kid. And you could probably still watch it and find some sort of enjoyment, like nostalgic enjoyment out of it. Like I found that to be interesting. My daughter's 4 and still watches those kinds of shows. So I don't know if she's going to get a joke about a show like that she's currently watching. Like again, there's a lot of jokes here for adults, which is not a bad thing. It's just, I don't know. It's an interesting movie. Can we talk about the voices for a second?
Yeah, who was the standout? You want to talk about the new ones? I mean, they didn't get much screen time, honestly. With a
Well,
lot of big names.
I think that's worth it's worth mentioning. There was a story that came out in Puck's newsletter probably a couple years ago now or so, that I remember reading, and it talked about the pay and the voice cast here, right? Because you have two key members of the first movie that did not return here, and that's Bill Hader as Fear and Mindy Kaling, as discussed, did not return. And from what was reported on Puck, it's that they were, essentially Amy Poehler was offered $5 million to return to reprise the role of Joy, because as far as Disney was concerned, if there was any one person that returned to this movie, it was Amy Poehler. They couldn't do it without her. The others, sounds like they gave pretty low offers. And for Bill Hader and Mindy Kaling, who are, have become bigger stars in the past 10 years since the first movie came out, that they were not going to accept that. And so Disney recast them, right? So you have Tony Hale, who voiced Forky in Toy Story 4, is here as Fear now. And Liza Lapira, or Lisa Lapira, Liza Lapira, however you pronounce her name, is playing Disgust. And what's interesting about this to me is that Fear and Disgust, I think, play even bigger roles in this movie. Like they don't have huge roles in the first movie. So when I first saw they were recast, I was like, I don't think that's that big of a deal. They're probably not going to have that many lines anyways. But like they have a lot in this movie, and I do feel like I missed Bill Hader and Mindy Kaling a little bit. Like I would have liked to see them back here, not to disparage those that had to fill those shoes, but I would have liked to see that. But I understand this movie had a pretty big budget as it is. You got to make cuts where you can. That being said, Amy Poehler, great. It's what I would expect. She was able to return to this role, and I thought she was great. But I thought Maya Hawke was probably the standout here. I thought she was really great as Anxiety. I'm a really big fan of Ayo Edebiri, who voiced Envy here, and she's very up and coming. She was April O'Neil in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem, and is in The Bear. But the Envy character just didn't do much for me. I thought that being Envy, the Envy wasn't very well defined in this movie. I'm also a big fan of Paul Walter Hauser, who plays Embarrassment here, but he, I guess this is a slight spoiler, he really only has one line in the whole movie. Like it's mostly just making a lot of noises and sounds. I'm sure Paul Walter Hauser, who's like kind of a fanboy in himself, he'd be the first to, like, he's a big wrestling fan and fans of these kinds of IPs and franchises. I'm sure he was just happy to be invited to be a part of it and be, whatever. But I would have liked to hear more from him or see him utilized better. I don't know. These are like super nitpicky complaints, but it is worth noting because it's a pretty big voice cast.
As long as they don't replace Phyllis Smith as Sadness, I won't revolt. That's probably the other than obviously Amy Fuller as Joy. We need Sadness to stick with her. You know, I don't see anyone than Phyllis Smith doing that, and that's like the perfect casting. I think. What was interesting is they showed us other emotions, the same emotions in other people's heads, and I think that would make for like a great spin-off. I don't know how much of Riley you want to focus on. It'd be kind of cool to see um, other people, even adults, like just kind of a spin-off or something and kind of get away from Riley, because I just don't know how much you can just rely on Riley in these films. It'd be nice to kind of see it spin off a little bit and maybe focus on more core emotions instead of so many that aren't really well defined like this one. But despite its flaws, I still thought this film had some valuable lessons, some really great relatability, and I don't know, just some good moments. But
Yeah,
yeah,
like I guess I think we're overly critical, or we're willing to take the dive here just because we're fans of Pixar. We like these movies, and this is still a better movie, in my opinion, than like the Garfield movie or even Kung Fu Panda 4 or some of the other animated movies that have come out this year, right? Which is really, I feel like there's not that many big theatrical released animated movies, which is probably why so many people showed up to see this one this weekend. But um, Inside Out is a special movie, so naturally we're gonna really dive into Inside Out too, and I think be a little bit more critical of it than maybe we would be other animated fare. I go in with bigger expectations for Inside Out 2 than I do for the fourth Kung Fu Panda movie, and that's just the fact of the matter.
well, I mean, we talked about this before. The box office kind of took a big dip for whatever reason. We couldn't figure it out. But with Bad Boys, Ride or Die coming back, that really rejuvenated the box office for a rated R film. I mean, that's pretty impressive. And then all of a sudden now Inside Out 2 hits, and now it's close to 300 million worldwide opening up, which is wild. So I think it's
Well,
just some.
the tracking on this one, they were predicting it was going to make like, I can't remember the exact number, but it was like in the 80s or $90 million was the prediction. And of course, this rocketed past that. This made what, $155 million domestic opening weekend. So it's the first movie of 2024 to open to over $100 million. So that's a huge deal. But it did, significantly more than that. So that's great. But it also just goes to show how unpredictable the state of the box office is right now, right? Like all the people showed up for Inside Out 2, but like Inside Out 2 in its opening weekend domestically has made almost more than what The Fall Guy has made worldwide in its entire theatrical run, which is mind blowing, right? The Fall Guy, starring Ryan Gosling, fresh off of Barbie, which was the highest grossing movie of last year, and an Oscar nom for playing Ken, playing a stuntman in a big action movie. Like you would think that's just a given, but like people were not showing up for that one in theaters. I don't know if it's people like me that are parents and they loved the first Inside Out, and so they're taking their kids to go see it, almost more so because they want to see it too. um yeah, this did kind of gangbusters, and it's fascinating, especially because Elemental, Lightyear, some of the Pixar movies that have been released in theaters before, um have underperformed. And there's the whole conversation about Disney Plus and movies going to streaming and all that, which those discussions have been had at length by many a pundit on the internet and on podcasts, and I don't want to get into all that here, but like it just shows how difficult it is to predict it and how easy it is to kind of weave narratives about it.
But also, I think it's summer movies, kicking off summer movies. I really think that makes a big difference when kids are out of school or near out of school. I guess they are out of school. I don't know. I don't know when kids get out of school these days, whether summer hits, but I think the summer blockbuster season is really a real thing, and stuff that comes out. And we talked about this January, February duds, March, April, pretty average, but nothing killer, and maybe a couple flops. And then here comes May, and then June, July, and then August, it starts to slow down, September, and then October, you get some average stuff. Curious to see what Beetlejuice 2 does when it comes out in September and what comes out in October. And then you get your November, December's, which is another rise in the box office. So to some extent, I think it's predictable. I don't think what I said is crazy. I think it's just stuff we've noticed about the trends, and I would like to dive deep into why that is. But also, I guess it's due to holidays and vacation time. I guess you want to call it vacation, just when kids are out of school, and I guess also the quality of film. That really is the thing. What it is too. Who's putting out these films and what they are. So it's smart to put out stuff like this. If the Fall Guy came out Christmas time, would have been doing a little bit better.
It's really hard to tell. I mean, it came out on what's typically reserved for Marvel, right? Like usually that first weekend of the summer, that's the weekend that Guardians of the Galaxy 3 came out, that Avengers movies have come out. So you would think it's like a good weekend, but yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to tell. I think now the question is going to be with as good as Inside Out 2 performed, do Deadpool and Wolverine or Despicable Me 4 do better than this? Like $155 million is an incredible opening weekend. Do either of those movies open to more than this? I think that's going to be what's interesting to see.
I think Deadpool is on track. I don't know if this was domestic or global. I don't know what it was because it was a quick little glance. It was like $200 million tracking, maybe opening for Deadpool. That could be worldwide or whatever it is, probably.
It would be insane for a rated R movie like that, but it could happen. It really could. If there's any movie that could, it's going to be that one. I think that's probably the movie of the summer that people are most aware of and looking forward to. Although I wouldn't discount Despicable Me 4, even though that's not for us. Kids love that
is for us,
franchise.
Drew. Let's not lie. That is for us.
My wife loves the Minions. Like she thinks that they're so funny, and yeah. I mean, Minions. Who would have thought?
It's clever. I fell in love with them since the first film, and I guess at the end of the year we'll follow up and see what's going on with the box office the past 12 months. Curious to see what Kraven the Hunter does in December, and see what the last Venom movie does.
Venom 3 might do well. I can guarantee you, Kraven is not going to do anything close to this. Who knows? Maybe they'll surprise me. I don't know. I would be shocked though.
For everyone out there, we're taking bets right now. Which one's gonna do better, Venom 3 or Kraven the Hunter? So place your bets now. Place your votes. Send those in, and we'll see at the end of the year which one comes out on top. Didn't think we're gonna end this episode like that, of a Venom versus Kraven the Hunter pinning against each other. But for all you tuning in, don't forget to subscribe and share all the Nerdtropolis content we have coming your way that we keep delivering. And once again, Drew, where can they find you?
You can find me at Drew Munhausen on all the different social media platforms, weekly over at Fresh Out the Podcast, and here, my favorite place to talk movies with Sean on the Moviegoers Society.
Thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Moviegoers Society. Once again, I'm Sean Tajipour, the mayor of Nerdtropolis, and we will see you at the movies.